Hi, Sean here at H&H, and wanted to create a quick tutorial talking about our system configuration screen. So let's go ahead and get over to that. So from the main menu of HH Schools, if we go up to Setup and then System Configuration, we get this little pop-up. I'm going to bring it up here. That's got a bunch of different settings and file paths and browses and checkboxes and things, and it can be a little bit overwhelming if you're not sure what this is. So I'd like to take the time to talk about what each of these folders are and why they're useful to you and what you should do about them. To start off with, on this configuration and settings screen, in good H&H fashion, we've always tried to make things as easy as possible for you, and have already placed some good recommendations on where these folders should be based off of some of the folders that were installed when you installed HH Schools. Um, First and foremost, probably the most important one we're going to talk about is the project images and data folder. This is, by default, it's going to be in your documents folder in a folder path through HH Color Lab and HH Schools. This is where all the images and all the project information, cropping information, order details are going to live um, throughout HH Schools and where it's going to access that information. Um, and so this is the lifeblood of HH Schools. This is where do your projects, where do all your images and data live? And by default, it puts that on your documents folder, which is great and works just fine if you want to work off of your computer. However, if you ever get into a situation where you have multiple workstations of people that are trying to access the same project from different computers, with this option, you can now network that, meaning you can now access those projects from multiple computers. It's a relatively easy process. All you really need to do is go to Browse, and then from there you should be able to go to the volume or folder, your network location, if you will, where you want those project images and data to live. Then on the other computer, you'll point that project images and data folder to the same location. Um, so that's helpful for this point forward, but if you have any projects that you've already created and started working on, you're going to want to move them from this documents, HH Color Lab, HH Schools project data folder to that new network location wherever you put that. Okay, moving on here. Um, we have this checkbox that says enable browsing to project data folders. And by default, we don't check that. Unless you are a power user in HH Schools, I don't recommend using this feature. It basically allows you to browse, to organize your projects in a way that you can browse to them every single time to the root folder for those different projects. So if you have a folder for 2015, another one for 2016, another one for 2017, or you want to separate your schools from your sports, your dance from your marching band, however you want to look at that, you can do that by creating them in separate folders. Then with this feature enabled, you can then browse to um, that location and then open those files. It's a little bit overwhelming, and more often than not, you end up creating a lot of extra work for yourself. So unless this is something that's really essential for you to organize the hundreds of projects you've got going on, I would not recommend checking this box. If it is something that interests you, feel free to call us at customer service, 800-821-1305, and we'll be happy to talk to you about that, how to use it, and if you are a great candidate for that or if there's a better solution for you. All right, moving on, we've got the order destination folder. For most of you folks that are uploading the orders directly to the lab without burning them to a disk or a zip drive, the default location is going to be fine. However, what is this exactly? This is every time you place an order, we put all your images and information, a text file, into a zip file, and then we'll send that to the lab, either uploading it or you, again, can put it on a disk and mail it to us. Um, and so those zip files are going to still live on your computer in that location. So part of your season cleanup, if you will, would be, wanting to go through and clean up those packaged orders since you're no longer needing those. Um, and by default, again, that's going to be in your Documents hhschools folder. If you want to put those in a common location, again, if you have a network set up and you have multiple computers running, you can move that to a network drive so that you're not filling up your local hard drive with that information. Um, Now to the backup default folder. So with hhschools, as powerful and as fantastic program it is, um, we always recommend creating backups of your projects, high res and low res alike. And we can spend a whole nother conversation talking about when to do that and what type to use and when to use that. And we'd be happy to have that conversation with you. But to keep things moving, the backup default folder is just saying, where do you normally keep your backups? And by default, we're putting that back in that Documents HH Color Lab folder. But what we personally recommend, or what I personally recommend, and as a group we strongly recommend, is make that a different drive altogether. Make sure that's something that's not where this folder is. So again, you can see this is in your Documents, HH Color Lab, HH Schools. This one's in the same location. If you lose that computer hard drive, you're also losing your backups. So at the very least, we recommend putting this on a external drive, or if you're putting your projects on a network drive, put these on the local, vice versa, something to get them separated so that if your main source, your projects crash, you've got a backup to work off of. And as scary as it may sound, we get calls every week with customers that are in this type of situation where they need help and they need to get back to a backup. Okay, moving on to sunnier pastures, we've got the image editing software. Image editing software, i.e. Photoshop, is what you're seeing here, is a nice tool where if you're working in a project and you notice, hey, there's an image that I can see a light stand or something, I just need to go in and do a quick touch up on this image. You can do that by linking your external editor, i.e. Photoshop, to the to hhschools. And so by default, we've got it will look for the latest current version of your software there and then load that in there. But from time to time, as you're loading projects, you get this really weird cryptic message that about halfway through you see this word external editor. That basically is saying, hey, it sounds like you've updated your Photoshop, and we're still looking for the old one and need you to point us to the new one. So what you would do in that situation is come to this configuration and settings screen, go to browse, and browse out to that Photoshop CC 2015, 2016, whatever it is, .app, or if you're on a PC, .exe executable. The next one is the package data folder. The package data is the all the um, packages and add-ons configurations, where that lives. And again, that's going to be in your documents folder, hhschools, very tight and neat and tidy. And that's a great place for that. But again, if you're in a network location where you have multiple computers that are going to be working from the same packages and you need to make sure you're all on the same version, that's a nice thing to put on a network location, where you can access that across multiple computers. That's as simple as browsing to that network location on both those computers. Then when you build a package on one computer, it's then available on the other computer. And then the order data folder. This is similar to the order destination folder, but in that for every zip file that we create to send an order into the lab, whether you create the zip file or not, anytime you go to project create order, whether it's a service item, proof, or package order, we're going to create a record of that, a little XML file. And so while this file is not very large, it does, um, we do keep record of that. And so this is asking, where do you want that located? Again, if you are networking, this is one of those things that you would want to put in a network path so that um, multiple computers can see when orders were created, last time it was, or when was it sent in, other information about that without having to go to that person's specific computer to find that. And the last one, this is one that at the current moment we don't check by default, but I personally recommend checking no matter what kind of setup and system you're using. This is the use package history functionality. With this checkbox checked, this means you will, every time you place an order and an order zip file is created, then we'll take whatever's in the package field and move it to a new field called package history. This will then allow you to keep record of what orders have been placed without cluttering up your package field so that as you place late orders and reorders, you can do so on an individual order basis without having to reorder everything. And then one thing that is normally checked, but I have unchecked it, is this enable temporary student ID card warning. Um, with that ID card warning, hhschools has the ability that you can create temporary ID cards before picture day. Say you've got a school that they need to have ID cards on day one, end of August, but you're not coming in to photograph them until halfway through September. We can create ID cards, temporary ID cards. It's going to have the student's information, grade, teacher, a barcode, the school name, and the year on those ID cards. And so as you're importing the data, if you're missing any of that information, this warning message will come up and let you know, hey, you're missing this information. This is going to prevent you from creating these temporary ID cards. So you might want to fix that before proceeding. I don't normally do that with my workflows, so I have unchecked that so it does, stops reminding me of that as I don't need to worry about it. And then the autosave interval is by default is at 5, and I would recommend leaving that as such. But this is asking when we do our autosaves, every time you make a change in a project, um, without waiting for you to close the project to write all that information, we're going to autosave all those changes every 5 minutes. And based off of your computer performance and network accessibility, we recommend 5 minutes is a good rule of thumb. You're welcome to increase or decrease that based off of your performance. But again, as you increase those save intervals down to a lower number, it's going to be saving more often and start to slow down your processing capabilities. So 5 minutes has been a good rule of thumb without affecting too much change and folks' work. So that is the configuration and settings screen. I hope that helps explain a little bit. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to call us at customer service, 800 821 1305. Have a great day.